This is a More Than Just Podcast production.
Welcome to Spotcast Season 4, Episode 32. My name is Tim Mitra. I am in the Alpha Quadrant in Toronto, Ontario. I'm joined once again, also in the Alpha Quadrant, by Jonathan Kuline in Mississauga, Ontario.
Greetings.
And somewhere in the Delta Quadrant, on the edge of the universe, near the Great Barrier, is Jaime Lopez Jr. in Seattle, Washington.
How's it going?
Right. I just want to point out that I think today they proved that the universe is flat, because there's like an edge.
That was my first thought, and I've had the same issue with a bunch of sci-fi where it's like, oh no, this wave is going through the universe. Like, go down. Isn't space infinite? Go down.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
It's multi-dimensional space. If something's coming straight for your ship, go down or up.
Yeah, you have three coordinates. You have yaw, pitch, and what's the roll, right? So, yeah. Hello? I don't know.
Yeah.
Just waiting for, we arrived at the edge of the universe. Apparently, next week Discovery is going to just fall off. I don't know what's going to happen. Is this the same barrier from Star Trek V?
We talked about that a few episodes back when they started talking about the Great Barrier, and it was with great resignation I had the thought today, oh geez, am I going to have to watch Star Trek V again?
Yeah, with the sort of the neoclassic disembodied heads coming towards you, and didn't Robin Williams have like a plate head that would disconnect from his body? And maybe that's a different movie. Never mind.
What does God need with a starship?
Yes, exactly.
It's so bad.
The Ready Room this week, which did not have a preview of Star Trek Discovery's next episode. Instead, it had a preview of the upcoming first episode of the new season of Star Trek Picard. But either way, a big part of this episode was the insane number of times that people have breached or tried to breach the galactic barrier, and TOS, they just made it seem like a minor inconvenience. It was like a hedge that you just have to vault over
yeah.
to get across. But it was interesting. I didn't really know with the big...
Wait, if we have this Great Barrier thing at the edge of the Alpha Quadrant, how did they explain Voyager?
No, but it wasn't in between quadrants. I interpreted it as like a sphere around the galaxy.
Oh, they went down instead of straight, right?
Or more.
The Delta Quadrant is straight north.
North, yes. Third star to the right? Straight on till morning? That's the one?
That's the one, yeah.
All right. Anyway, let's dig in with some fact check. And, look, it's me. So International Space Station, I mentioned it last week. I did put a link in the show notes if you people were looking. I didn't put it on day one, but I put it a couple of days ago. This is a story from fastcompany.com that the International Space Station, you got some time, folks. If you're going to be an astronaut, you can still get up there and hang around and be COVID-free. But it is to be officially decommissioned in 2031. So you got 10 years. If you're in a high school right now and you're thinking about the space program, then go for it. You have a chance of getting up there. Notwithstanding, it takes 5 years to train to be an astronaut to go to the space station. But pitter patter. And we'll head over to headlines with Jonathan. What you got?
Yeah, we talked last week about how the good folks at Paramount, including J.J. Abrams, proudly announced that they are going to bring back the Star Trek franchise to movie theaters. They're going to film a fourth Star Trek movie in the Kelvin timeline starring Chris Pine, and they're going to, bring back the whole crew, Zach Quinto, and all these people. Well, Hollywood Reporter has a lovely story this week that apparently this news was a surprise to everyone on the cast. They were not apparently contacted before they made this announcement. And there apparently was a lot of surprise that they were going to be in this new movie. They didn't know the announcement was coming. They hadn't been contacted. And were pretty caught off guard when they were told that they were going to be in a new movie that they had not signed on for. So,
I guess J.J. Abrams has a whole pile full of gold-plated latinum, right?
That's right.
Pay them with?
Yeah, he had it all figured out. He didn't need to consult with anybody. But yeah, funny in a sort of dark kind of way that this is the way that large corporations work. They wanted to make this announcement at this event, and it says in this article, which we'll have linked to in our show notes, that the only person that seemed to have been consulted at all was Chris Pine, who
well, that makes sense.
They view as sort of the linchpin. If they get him, then they'll get everyone else. But that we're still waiting for Zachary Quinto, Simon Pegg, Carl Urban, Zoe Saldana, John Cho apparently are all looking forward to hearing from Paramount about this film that they're apparently going to be starring in. So I know we were all talking about the merits of a new Star Trek theatrical movie and what that was going to mean, but maybe we'll pump the brakes a little bit on our excitement until we get news that we've got everybody actually locked down for
all right,
actually being in the movie.
Does Jaime understand the pump the brakes analogy?
I drove before ABS was standard on vehicles, so
so you're familiar? Okay.
Yeah, it's one of those weird things where I assume modern drivers, so teenagers, are like, you do the natural instinctive thing of, oh no, I'm losing grip and sliding, just slam on the brake, which seems intuitively what you should do. And with ABS, it's like, yeah, that's actually good because the computer will pump the brakes many, many times more quickly than you could possibly do it as a human. But for old school people, pre-ABS anti-lock brake systems, you should not slam. You should pump the brake and kind of ease into it.
Alrighty. So, you're up with something about Marvel. The makers of ice cream, Marvel.
Yeah, I was surprised that Jonathan hadn't picked this one up. Maybe it was like a weird window here, but this is for you, Jonathan, that all of Netflix's Marvel shows are moving to Disney Plus in Canada. That's all we know for now. No clue what's going on for the rest of the world, including the US of A. But you get a little bit of sunshine every once in a while. It's not all gloom and doom for Canadian properties.
Is this to make up for the fact that we get so hosed on some of this other stuff? Is this this is our one perk?
Yeah, it's like the giveth and taketh away thing. You got the Seinfeldian, like the universe balances out stuff.
Well, I'm glad I spent all that time last weekend catching up on all of the Daredevil, and what else did I watch? The Murders in the Building. I finished all that stuff off because I figured I had to get these done because they're leaving. Mind you, the Murders in the Building is leaving end of the month, but there is a season 2, so I'm scratching my head. Anyway, but yeah, I finished Marvel. I finished Daredevil. Now I know how it ends.
Cool.
On a handshake.
Cool.
Yeah. Have you finished it yet? You haven't finished yet.
No, there's not even an opportunity at the moment. It's a fool's game to try to do this in the 4 days left.
True, right?
It might be mathematically possible, I suppose. Especially if you skip intros, skip the credits, and etc. Don't eat.
Well, who do watch those anyway? Do you even get to watch those on Netflix? You have to really be quick on the remote to watch those.
Yeah, it does seem like it tries to automatically get you there in 5-second countdown or something. So
can we talk about the end of Daredevil since we have a minute here, Jonathan?
Yeah, sure.
You want to roll for it?
Just put your fingers in your ears there, Jaime.
Jaime, have you watched all of Daredevil?
I've not, but I'm sure it's fine because they probably have referenced, or it has ramifications for other things. I have seen Defenders and other stuff, so it's probably there, I would guess.
I just want to ask Jonathan, were you satisfied with the ending between Daredevil and Kingpin?
No, I think there's plenty more story to tell, but I would say as these things go and compared to some of the other Marvel Netflix series, I think by the time they did the finale of Daredevil, the writing was a little more on the wall, and therefore I think it was a little more satisfying.
You mean that he was going to be going into other properties, and
no, that he was that the show was being canceled, and that they were trying to wrap it up in a somewhat satisfying way.
Right.
So it sort of does end on a little bit of Judd Nelson raises his hand in the air and they freeze frame. Like it just sort of, it's meant to just sort of be, like, okay, that's an ending. So if they're not doing any more, that could be an ending. Compared to a series which I don't think either of you watched all of. I can't recall, Jaime, if you watched all of Luke Cage.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, so Luke Cage season 2, Tim, I don't think you've watched it, but that very much sets up a season 3. Like when you finish season 2, it really feels like part 2 of at least 3 parts. So you come away from that thinking like, well, this is kind of unsatisfying because it leaves him in a very unusual place. And we do see him again. He shows up again in Jessica Jones.
Mm-hmm, right.
But so we get a hint of it, and he references sort of where he was left off, which I think was they were trying to be a little bit more satisfying in the ending. But I think in the end, he's left in a little bit more of a limbo state. I think Jessica Jones and Daredevil probably finish in the most satisfactory way, although Punisher season 2 kind of does too. It leaves the door open for, and then he continued doing whatever he's doing, like Iron Fist is a very unsatisfying ending. Luke Cage is a very unsatisfying ending. The other 3 tie up a little more neatly. But
so how do you mean Daredevil was canceled? You mean like they knew that the Disney transition was happening and all that kind of stuff, or
yeah,
I mean we're not paying any more for this, or what?
It happened sequentially. So basically, the seasons ended on the first few of them, and then the news started coming. So it didn't happen all at once. It wasn't like all 4 of these or all 5 of these shows are canceled all at once. They did them in like a sequential order. So I think when they got the cancellation notice for the first show, I think the showrunners of the other shows were like, ruh-roh. And I think they knew, okay, we are not going to get another season to this. Let's try and find a way to put a bit of a bow on this, because that's how it's going to go. So I think for the later ones, particularly Punisher and Jessica Jones, I think they were able to give them a little bit more of a satisfying ending. It's pretty common. I mean, the analogy I think would be comic books, right? In comic books, most comic books never truly end, whether they end a series and then start it with a new number 1, or they continue it. Like this week I bought Amazing Spider-Man number, I think 891. It's a series that's been going on since the 1960s. It will go on long past my lifetime, probably. You just kind of have to accept that, whether you pop in and pop out or however it goes, it's just going to keep going. But they do try and, with different writers coming in or artists coming in, they do try and give you these sort of jump on, jump off points that, they tell you a story arc. There are small stories, and then there are big overarching stories. And, as a reader, it's very satisfying to jump in when you're getting, something newer, and then you jump out when a writer leaves or a character dies or whatever the milestone sort of end of that is. In the last number of years, it's been very trendy in comics to not continue the traditional numbering from, when the series started, but to basically every few years, every 3 to 5 years, you reboot the series with a new number 1, because everybody wants to own Batman number 1 or Spider-Man number 1.
Right. Yeah.
They reboot it with a new number 1 because it gives new readers an opportunity to jump right in with a new story and a new writer and all those things. And it gives people a bit of a clean break. DC did that a number of years back. They did something called the New 52, where they basically ended continuity with Flashpoint, which was a big Flash crossover series. They ended continuity as you knew it. And then they basically relaunched 52 new series, all with a new number 1, with new creative teams and new ways of coming at it. And for the most part, all of those were slightly tweaked iterations, different costumes, different origins, different backstories to these characters. A lot of comic readers took that as an opportunity to be like, cool, I can stop now. I did.
Right.
And that allowed me to sort of cherry pick, like, oh, okay, I like these creators. I'll follow a few more of these. Some characters I really still felt fond of. I wanted to see what their interpretations were. But in a lot of cases, I felt like, cool, it's an ending. I can just walk away. And in a lot of those series, they knew the end was coming, so they kind of wrapped things up in the same way that they wrapped up Daredevil and they wrapped up Jessica Jones and they wrapped up The Punisher, where it's not over. You know, the character's not meant to be like, you know, they're not ending the series with somebody's death. They're just, you know, and they continued to fight for the good fight ad infinitum. So for me, I haven't bought a new Superman comic since they changed over the New 52, which would be 2012, I want to say. But I don't think Superman's gone. As a matter of fact, I'm sure there are some amazing stories that have been told since then, but I just haven't felt compelled to jump back in and read all those adventures and everything else, because I got my clean break. In this case, they've given you a clean break on a couple of these stories. You know, Daredevil ends pretty much with, you know, and they all got back together and they lived happily ever after, and theoretically they could, you know, they could restart from that point if they started a new series, or they could start 5 years later with, you know, oh, but circumstances have changed. They can go a lot of different places. But if you just wanted to have a clean break there, you could.
Yeah, so it's interesting, like, you know, because I remember reading, you know, Spider-Man and Superman when I was, you know, before you were even born, right? And so it's interesting to me that this same, like, as you said, there's like 800 or whatever episodes of this book. So I'm curious, did Peter Parker have like a Walkman and then eventually a BlackBerry and now he has an iPhone? Does that work? Or
yeah, absolutely. And again, there's been different iterations.
He hasn't aged. He's still in grade 12 in high school and the whole bit, right?
Well, they've done a lot of different things to the different characters over the years, and then, you know, they'll do like these mini series where it's like, you know, a look back, or, you know, Marvel did the thing a number of years back. It's been over 20 years now, but they did the Ultimate Universe, where basically they took the stories that you knew about the X-Men or Spider-Man or the Fantastic Four, but modernized it. So they basically started with the things that they liked. Boy gets bit by spider, high school boy gets bit by spider, and has adventures. That's the basic principle. But instead of starting it in 1963, they started it in 2001. Okay, cool.
Right, okay.
So he has all the technological advantages of the time. It's a much more modern take, and they cherry pick the things they like, and they take some traditional storylines and they tweak them to be more modern. And it's a new entry point for a lot of readers. A lot of readers took to it and really gravitated to it. You know, that's how you end up with things like Miles Morales, right? Like, you know, he spun out of that universe where, because it wasn't really Peter Parker, although it was, they could eventually, through the telling of that series over, you know, 10 plus years, they killed Peter Parker. He died saving the world. And then that Ultimate Marvel Universe didn't have a Spider-Man anymore. And so Miles Morales steps in and becomes the new Spider-Man.
Okay, right.
You can't kill, quote unquote, the real Peter Parker in comic books because he's a cash cow. You don't do that. That's stupid. But if you create this alternate one and then you kill him off, you have the tragedy, but then you reboot with this new character, then you've got another cash cow. Again, it's the way to basically look at it through the prism of good storytelling, but really it's a business. You're trying to make people buy these things and frankly be addicted to them because you have to buy it on a monthly basis, or 6 times a year, or every time a miniseries comes out. So, I mean, that's the thing. As I say, comic books, I expect, whether the format changes to completely digital down the road or whatever it is, in some form, comic books will continue long past my lifetime, and I'll have my period of time that is important to me. And, I'll have to reconcile the fact that I will never know how Peter's story ends because it'll outlive me. Yeah,
it's kind of interesting. Like, it's kind of I think a corollary to that is that when people ask me who've never seen Star Wars before, where do they start? And I always say start with A New Hope, right? Because I think you could start with Episode 1 and work your way all the way through to Rise of Skywalker. But the reality is that as a movie file, I think that you have to start from the first movie and watch them in the order that they were released, I guess, And if you really want to, save your brain cells, you just skip the whole first the prequel series, like we've talked about before, right?
Yeah.
you know.
Although, again, we've talked about it. If you are somebody who's going to dive into the deep end and are going to go watch Clone Wars, you could make a case that you could actually put some purpose and meaning to those things. I think Dave Filoni did a wonderful job of actually redeeming the prequels by telling a really good story in Clone Wars.
Yeah.
That doesn't make them good movies, but it does give them a little more depth.
Yeah, but like again, it breaks the storytelling breaks if you watch them in the order that they're numbered, right? Like if you start with Phantom Menace and work your way forward, right?
Mm-hmm.
So because you get to episode 4 and it's like, because I mean, like again, I go back to I still have the original cut of A New Hope, which wasn't called A New Hope when it came out, and it kind of like, it's like, oh look, we found this lost, what was it, Buck Rogers, and it was
Flash Gordon.
Buster Crab. Yeah, Buster Crab. He played Flash Gordon, I think, right? And they would have these serialized movies that they would show before other things. And if you wanted to, you had to go every couple of months to see the next chapter, sort of thing, right? And it's kind of like, hey, we found this episode 4, let's watch it, kind of deal. Like that's kind of how it was originally released. And I thought that was really a really cool way of telling a story. And then of course, then people kind of completionists went, what? Where's 1, 2, and 3? Oh no. And that's how we end up where we are today. Anyway, but yeah, I think from the point of view, like you were saying, and again, I think I told you when I was younger, when I bought the first Star Wars comic, episode number 1 comic, I was so disappointed that it didn't tell the whole story of A New Hope, right? Nope. It only got you so far, and then you had to go and buy the next week, and I never got into the habit of doing that, right? So,
and if you had, you'd be take good care of them. You'd have been glad you did, because those are worth a couple bucks now.
Don't forget, all of my comic books and all of my toys and stuff like that, my mother let my nephews, play with them and drool on them and crayon them and whatever, right? So
yeah,
I think you've got a couple of my Mad magazines that have been written on, right?
I do. I believe I do. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh well. Anyway.
I like to look at it as an artistic vision of Mad Magazine.
Yeah, it's an interpretation. It's a performance piece. Alrighty. Let's just jump into the episode that we're talking about this week, which is the War of the Stars. No, the Trek of the Stars. Star Trek Discovery, Season 4, Episode 10, The Confusion of the Barrier. What was it called?
I believe it was called The Great Barrier.
Oh, it was called The Great Barrier. Oh, okay.
Let me just double check that. I must have been.
I thought it was called Star Trek Discovery Episode
The Galactic
10.
Barrier.
Why are we here? That's what I thought it was called.
The Galactic Barrier, Episode 10. Yes.
Galactic Barrier. Alrighty. Well, Jonathan's doing the recap, so over to you.
Yeah, this was a complicated episode. Lots of jumping around. So hold.
When you get to the Admiral Vance's comment before they take off, I have something to say.
All right. I'll leave some breath in there. So we start off at Starfleet headquarters. There is a meeting taking place between some of the big heads of Starfleet and the Federation, trying to get ready for this mission to go and penetrate the galactic barrier and to communicate with species 10C in the wake of last week's episode where Tarka blew up a DMA and they sent an even bigger, nastier DMA in its place. And so we've got, sitting around the table, we've got, let's see, Burnham, Rillick, the president, Vance, the head of Starfleet, Admiral Vance. We've got Kovich, David Cronenberg's character, and who else is there? And
there was a Ferengi. There was a Ferengi.
Yeah, so these are supposed to be the delegates who are supposed to be going on this mission along with the Discovery crew to try and make first contact with this conceivably extremely powerful race that lives beyond the galactic barrier, that have sent the DMA to mine their space of boronite and to potentially, try and make sure that there aren't these misunderstandings. To that end, we've got Kovich sitting there talking about how, this is going to be a tough mission. No matter what they think is going to happen isn't necessarily going to happen. We get introduced to Dr. Harai, who is an astrolinguistics xenophonologist and a theoretical semiotics expert. those are all fun things to say. I thought I'd just throw those in so I could say them. He is there, and he's going to sort of stand in. We find out that Kovic is not going because he has something more important to do. I think we might want to
important than
discuss that. Yeah. Somebody says to him, "What are you doing that's more important than that?" And he's like, "I can't tell you." Anyone got any thoughts on what it is Kovic is doing?
Don't know. Wow.
Internet saying like he's a person from a different universe. Some people are saying he's from a different time. I have no idea. I have no idea what he's up to.
Maybe he really had to go to the bathroom. I don't know.
I think the only answer is that he's Batman, because you never see him at the same time as Batman.
That's true.
It was very strange. And then in a scene that we'll talk about in a second, we also see that that Commander Bryce isn't going along as well, right? Or Lieutenant Bryce isn't going along as well, and he's going to be working with Kovic. Now, they were working on trying to work on sort of the ultimate communicator.
Right.
So that they could communicate with Species 10C, and Bryce is staying behind so that he can work on that with Kovic. So I don't know. Anyway, so
It's interesting that when they were talking about that, when they mentioned the fact that the confirmation bias in the translators, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they mentioned Klingons, and yet there wasn't a single Klingon in the room, and there wasn't a single Klingon in the episode. So I don't know what the reference to Klingons were, other than a tie-in to the original series or the first season of this episode of Discovery. I don't know, but it was weird that I think they were talking about how they have trouble communicating with the Klingons because of the translator malfunctions.
Yeah,
autocorrect or whatever.
It occurred to me as we were watching this, and they had the delegates and everything, that we haven't seen any Klingons since we moved to this part of the timeline. And I wonder if that will pay off down the road, so that they can go, by the way, didn't you notice you didn't see any Klingons through this? But I digress. So Kovic says he's not going. He does make a very funny reference where they talk about going through the galactic barrier, and he says it's not going to be like going on a 3-hour tour. And that was a little Easter egg for old folks like us, I guess. The 3-hour tour, Gilligan's Island reference, which probably went over a lot of young people's heads, but
it confused Sorrow too, right?
Yeah, that's right. He's like, I don't recognize the reference. Like, never mind.
It's going to take longer than 3 hours. Come on.
So we then find out that the DMA that has replaced the other DMA, the bigger, nastier DMA that they've sent, is actually going faster. It's going faster than the previous DMA. It's working its way through. So
it's like they're clear cutting the Amazon rainforest is what they're doing.
Yeah. So they're saying that, the other one was supposed to take, I think, a week. That's what they had said to book in the last episode. It was going to take a week for them to get in there and do the DMA stuff. So they had a week where they could try and penetrate the barrier. Now it's down to 12 hours, and it's going to take them 2 hours to get ready, which doesn't seem like good planning. Like maybe step it up a gear. I don't know. But
yeah, why do they have that whole 15 minutes of everybody saying goodbye to each other? Like, just put your like the firemen, when the alarm bell goes off in the fire hall, they don't say, hang on, I got to call my kids and say goodbye. They put their boots on and they get in the truck and they go.
Yeah. Yeah. And I get what they were sort of setting up was, they had to fortify the shields and add more programmable matter to the ship and yada, yada, yada to try and make sure that it was all ready. But then Burnham makes a point of saying in this conversation, well, we need to give people time to say goodbye. I'm like, do you? Like,
yeah, well, it's to set up Saru and T'Val, right?
Yeah. So we find out in this moment that President Rillick has a little moment with Admiral Vance and says, by the way, I'm transferring command of the Federation to the Vice President, and he will need your support. I am going on this mission. And says, I'm the best person for the job. I was the top ambassador for the Federation for 20 years. You need me there, not here. And we find out her first name is Lyra. I don't remember hearing that before, but that was interesting.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah. So, it was sort of an interesting moment that, we know.
What I wanted to say was at the beginning of that interchange, Vance says under his breath, it's a hell of a thing, which is the same thing that Captain Kirk says in An Undiscovered Country.
There you go.
Yeah. There was something else I was going to say about that too, but that's what I wanted to say was about the time. It's almost like the "I have a bad feeling about this" line that we get in Star Wars. You know.
There you go.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We cut from that scene that we jump over to.
Oh, sorry, I forgot. The thing I was going to say was, didn't Jaime say last week that she had said? Or was that in the preview that she was going to stay in?
No, you guys asked about the because I think you got like a proper trailer or other preview, and all we got on the Ready Room was the little scene of like, "Hey, I'm going on the mission. I'm giving up my powers to the vice president," which was a very
you mentioned it last
weird
week
preview to give us.
Yeah,
at least make use of your budget and be like, "Give me the pew pew pews," and then for the same one time you made the pew pew pews, like you got 2 sessions of it.
There you go. We got to Book's ship, and he is basically about to send Tarka packing. He's sort of saying, okay, I found a planet. It doesn't have electricity or anything, but I'm sure you'll be fine. Get off my ship, you jackass. You basically just destroyed my relationship with Starfleet. You destroyed my relationship with my girlfriend because, you couldn't stop yourself. And the two of them sort of have it out, hey, Tarka says like, hey, I did what we agreed to do. You're the one that, backed out at the last second. We agreed we're going to do this. I just followed through when you wouldn't. And so they have this sort of, little spat, and, Book sort of says, well, all right, well, what can you do for me, basically? And Tarka says, well, I have a way for us to get through the Great Barrier that's going to work, but we need to go get this MacGuffin called programmable antimatter.
Jaime's favorite thing, yeah.
Yes, programmable antimatter. And so...
Wait, that's not programmable matter as opposed to programmable antimatter. This is a new kind of...
This is a new thing, yes.
Matter. Oh, wow.
So having that new MacGuffin in there, Book sort of relents and says, fine, I need you to help me get through the barrier so that I can continue my mission, which is to stop the DMA from doing any more damage. And so they agree to go on this mission.
And mess up first contact, if you think about it, right?
Well, that's it, right? Or come to the rescue. We'll see in the next couple episodes. So the two of them agree to continue working together. They're going to go and find this stash of programmable antimatter that is sort of their motivation through this episode. We go back to Starfleet headquarters, and we get the farewell between Saru and Bryce, saying, this is where Bryce says, I'm still working on the communication thing. That leaves him in the hallway where he runs into Tarina, the president of Nivar, with whom they've been, kind of crisscrossing, will they, won't they, kind of Sam and Diane kind of thing there. And so he goes over and sort of addresses that, he's going to say goodbye to her. And he sort of says, well, I've really enjoyed getting to know you. And, maybe you and I kind of have a little more than just like a friendship going on. And she's like, oh, gotta go. And leaves him completely hanging, which was a very, very funny moment. I'm never... This
is seen right out of Discovery High, right?
Yeah, I'm never I'm always amazed and always impressed by how much Doug Jones, covered in that makeup, can still emote so well. He really is a gifted actor. In the way that he moves his head, the way that his body language works, he's so good considering what he's working with. So we go to Discovery, and Adira Tal has returned. They have come back from dropping Gray off at the Troll homeworld, where he is going to be doing his studies. And Burnham welcomes Adira back. Stamets sort of does the proud papa thing. Oh, we're so glad to have her back, and we're so great, and so great to see her, and she's going to do this great job on the thing. And Adira is sort of rolling their eyes, saying, okay, Dad, like, shut up. Setting things up for a little later on in the episode. We go to Rillick and Burnham. where they're talking about how they are going to sort of manage both being on this mission, because we cut back to that first episode of the season where Rillick went on a mission with them and was kind of being a pain in Burnham's butt. And so now they're trying to sort of set some ground rules. Okay, well, my job is to work with the crew, says Burnham. Your job is to work on like the delegates and the diplomacy side, and we'll try and stay out of each other's way and work together and not step on each other's toes. We go to the bridge, and Saru makes a very funny joke about herding cats, trying to get the delegates together, including all the different people. We have the delegates from Earth and Titan and the Ferengi and as it turns out, the Navarre, but we'll talk about that in a second. We get a nice speech from Burnham, hey, we're going, and poof, off we go. And then we are into our opening credits. Pretty long cold open, I would say, longer than average.
Mm-hmm. A lot, 15 minutes.
Yeah,
I noticed that. Yeah,
crammed in a lot of stuff in this episode. As I said, you'll notice as we keep going through this, there's a lot of jumping around. They go to black alert, poof, off they go. We come back after the opening credits, and instead of being 4 light years away from the galactic barrier, they're actually 9 light years away from the galactic barrier. Funny line from Burnham, who says to Stamets, "You owe me 5 light years." I thought that was a funny little dig. It's not an exact science, Captain.
Which is, it's science, and it's astronavigation, which is science.
Okay,
hello?
I guess what Paul's trying to say is...
Am I being a stickler here? I'm sorry.
I think what Paul's trying to say is, what's the line from Han Solo? You fly too close to a supernova, and you or drop out of light speed into an asteroid field, and you'll be, trip will be over real quick. I think what he's trying to say is, like, I tried to get us as close as we can without us entering into the galactic barrier and turning into a crispy fried Discovery. So you get what you get. It's at that point that we find out that Tarina actually is on board Discovery. They did reference before the credits that the ambassador from Navarre was running late, and she says, well...
Which should have been a clue, yeah.
Yeah, she says, well, there wasn't going to be anybody representing Navarre, and I thought I should be the one to represent Navarre. And, of course, this is a very awkward scene where Culber and Saru are there, and Culber's like, ooh, you told her something, didn't you? Because you look like you're very awkward right now.
And it's kind of like, but I've already invited the other girl to the prom.
Yeah.
I mean, like, now I can't go with the date I wanted to go with, like again, back at, Discovery High.
Well, and again, she did leave him hanging pretty hard there. So it was just funny to see. Again, great work by Doug Jones, just sort of, looking like, again, how you can still look so embarrassed and sheepish and that stuff while wearing that full face prosthetic. It really is impressive. We go to Book and Tarka. They have gone to the place where they are going to go and pick up this MacGuffin, the programmable antimatter, and they notice. Book notices that it's actually an Emerald Chain work camp, and sort of pulls out his phaser and says, "Where are you taking me? Like, I'm not going into Emerald Chain held territory for you. Forget that." And he's like, "No. I'm going to tell you a story." And so we start getting this unveil of the full backstory for Ruan Tarka, who, starts to sort of show you how he got to where he is. He is, flashback, he's suddenly got a dark beard and dark hair, and he is a prisoner of the Emerald Chain at this work camp. He's put into a cell with this alien species person named Oros, and clearly he is also a genius, as we've established that, while Tarka is a schmuck, he is a genius. And the two of them start bonding, and they start, connecting over the fact that, they clearly have like minds. And so this story sort of keeps popping in and out throughout the episode. Back to the barrier, Discovery as sort of arrives at the barrier. They're trying to figure out, how are we going to get through this thing? What they had in mind in the first place wasn't going to completely work. It was going to, take too long and do too much damage to their shields. They get the idea that they can basically ride these negative particles, these bubbles of negative particles through the Great Barrier, and that should give them sufficient protection inside that. Interesting effect when they decide to poof, off they go in there, and the visual spectrum changes. So that was an interesting effect where like it was a very simple use of a visual for us, the audience, to understand that they were going through something weird just by like changing the lights, where they lost the visual spectrum while they were going through this part before they got to the bubble that they wanted to get to. And yes, finally they sort of get into their safe space, and the idea is that they're going to ride this bubble, and it's going to take them from one side of the barrier to the other. We go back to Book and Tarka, and they see a cloaked ship taking off from the site of the Emerald Chain Work Camp, the ruined Emerald Chain Work Camp. And again, their sort of concern is, oh, well, maybe they took our stuff. And Tarka says, don't worry, the MacGuffin will still be there. Don't you worry. Goes back to his backstory, and we get a little more of, the relationship building between him and Oros, and he's trying to sort of figure out what it is that Oros is working on besides what they've been tasked with by the Emerald Chain, which is trying to find a non-dilithium warp engine. And it turns out that Oros is working on an interdimensional transporter. He's trying to find a way to transport them not just out of the Emerald Chain Work Camp, but to a place called Kailis. And Kailis is supposed to be this sort of Nirvana-like place. I immediately started thinking of Star Trek 7, the Nexus. In the way that he was describing it, it's like a place of beautiful peace and harmony and all. Okay, sure. All right. So then we go back to Discovery, and Burnham and Rillick have to go into the ready room because they've got this secret message that has just arrived the moment before they went into the Great Barrier. And it's Vance, and Vance is sort of saying, hey, we got some bad news for you. The DMA finished faster than we thought it would. It's jumped away from where it was in sort of nothing space there. It's now shown up in the Alpha Quadrant, and it's headed towards Earth and Navarre. And at its current trajectory, which I thought was really funny, because when he just said, yeah, we blew our calculations, and he was like, yeah, it's got 71 hours before it reaches Earth and Navarre. I was like, but didn't you just admit that you screwed up the timing on the last time you did calculations? So maybe that number is not so good. But he basically says, Earth and Navarre and Titan, which are the three of the key inhabited worlds in the Alpha Quadrant, are all at risk in the next few days. And then the debate comes on, should we tell the crew? Should we not tell the crew and the delegates? Do we keep this to ourselves? And the two of them have this sort of mild ethical debate of, is it better to tell the truth, or is it better to let them focus on the task at hand? We go back out onto the bridge because the Discovery crew has to inform them that they're now stuck in a bubble traffic jam, that the pocket of negative space that they're in, that they have been sort of riding through this barrier, was basically stuck behind a bunch of these other ones, and they realize that they could be there for, as Saru says, it could be hours, days, or weeks, but now they both know that they don't have the time for it. So they decide, well, we could sort of jump from bubble to bubble till we get to the front bubble, and then that bubble will take us through. And we cut back over to Tarka and Oros, and the backstory. They're trying to get their interdimensional transporter going, but they don't have enough power. And at that point, they try and get it going. It doesn't work. The Emerald Chain guards come through the door, and they beat the tar out of them both, particularly Oros. And then it, is revealed that Tarka was actually planted there, that he was spying for the chain and was trying to figure out what it is that Oros was working on besides the mission that he had been given, which is to work on the non-dilithium warp engine. And so there's this sort of very sad scene where, a sort of regretful Tarka is like, I agreed to do that because I was just so, I needed to be free, and this could get me free, but now I know you, and I don't want any harm to come to you. And he tries to get him out there, but Oros is pretty seriously hurt. He's, the Emerald Chain guards beat him up pretty good, and so Tarka escapes and leaves Oros behind. And of course, then we jump into the present, and Book is sort of saying, okay, so now I know who you are. And that's when Tarka basically reveals, okay, I built my own transporter, but I can't find any power source that will get me where I need to go. I need the DMA power source. Now, I'm just going to take a little aside here and say, but if Oros figured it out while still stuck at an Emerald Chain work camp, why does he have to go to this level of extreme to have that level of power if it must already exist in their universe?
Yeah, I didn't totally get that either. That kind of like Gilligan's Island thing here. If the professor was able to make a radio out of these coconuts, but he wasn't able to fix the dang boat, is kind of what felt like was happening there. I didn't fully, and maybe it's meant to be revealed in future episodes because he's assuming that Oros got to the other side, and we don't factually know that to be true.
Hmm. We go back to Disco, and they are now starting their bubble jumping. They are, jumping from place to place, and it's getting pretty hairy. The shields are getting pretty messed up, and they're down to, at one point, 2-3% of the left of the shields. And to keep the sort of morale going, and just to sort of throw a little salt in Burnham and Rillick's conversation about should they tell the truth, is the bridge crew starts talking about all the things they're going to do if they survive this. I'm going to go hiking here. Well, I'm going to go look at this. And my favorite place on Earth is this. And I'm going to Astoria, which was a nice Goonies reference there. It is just the knife twisting in Burnham and Rillick's guts, right? We didn't tell them the truth. Now they're all talking about the great things they're going to do on Earth when they get out of this. And of course, they know that Earth may not even be there unless they survive and accomplish their mission, of course. We then, they get through the other side. We get the, hooray. We go down to engineering. And we get the follow-up to the conversation from the beginning of the episode between Stamets and Adira, where Stamets sort of says, hey, sorry for coming on so strong. I just, I could tell that you were hurting with, being separated from Gray. And, I wanted to sort of help you. And, I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry because I'm not going to leave you in pain. I'm always going to react when I can tell that things are off with you. And Adira kindly says, I appreciate that, I have your support, but, I'm actually okay. Which is, it's nice that we don't just, again, we've talked about sort of the better writing and the better character development that we've seen this season. Mm-hmm. And this was a nice extension of that. It's not just, dust off your hands, Gray's in the past, that Adira is having these, sort of conflicted feelings, but it's part of her character evolution that we've seen throughout the course of the season, that they've gotten to a better place and is starting to feel a little more confident. And
so this is where Rogers decided that was the end of the show. So that's how we're going to wrap up the episode this week. And yeah.
Are you serious?
I have no idea what happened after this.
Well, let me tell you a story, Tim.
All right. Okay.
From there, we go to Rillick and Burnham. The two of them have the follow-up conversation. They have the
nobody saw coming, right? Nobody saw this coming throughout the whole time. No, never mind.
Yeah, the two of them have maybe we should tell the crew. Maybe we need to, given everything we've gone through, your feelings, my feelings. They sort of talk it out. We then go to Book and Tarka. They've got their MacGuffin, their programmable antimatter, and they're ready to go. And so they are, ready to join the fight. And we sort of set them up for going forward from there. Disco is now through the barrier. So Rillick addresses the crew and the delegates on the open channel and sort of says, hey, by the way, here's where we're at, and sort of breaks the bad news that potentially things are going to go south on Earth Titan and Navarre if they're not successful, and sort of ups the stakes, and makes everybody aware really what's on the line as we build towards our last few episodes of the season. And that, of course, we cannot fail, because not only will we potentially be up the creek, but all the people we love, the places we love, will be gone.
It's not like you're 900 years in the future and you're never going to be able to really go home anyway, right?
Well, some physical structures might be there still. Cliffs, hills, mountains, something.
Yeah, Roman amphitheaters, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Saru then gets a little bit of a happier moment with Sharina, where she's clearly, in spite of her Vulcan heritage, is a little shaken by the news that Navarre is now in the path of the DMA, and Saru sort of joins her, and she says, I've always found you to be a comforting presence, which is about as sexy a thing as a Navarre person can say to you, right? Rillick and Burnham then have a follow-up where they're talking about, the fact that they're going to, have to go check out this planet near the hyperfield that is where the energy source is coming from. And Rillick sort of says to Burnham, well, why me? Why did you have me address the crew and not do it yourself when you wanted to break the news? And Burnham sort of, says, you're here, you're the president. And, when you say these things and you speechify, you give the whole crew confidence, and you have a measure of gravitas that's going to really help us. And, frankly, at this point, I need that boost in the arm for the crew, because we now know the stakes. If this mission fails, not only are we screwed, but the Alpha Quadrant is screwed. So here we go. And that's the note we end on, is, they're heading to go to check out this planet that is a couple light years away from the energy field, and Book and Tarka are on their way. And if they fail, no more Alpha Quadrant. So there you go.
Cool.
So yeah, a busy episode, a lot of jumping around, a lot of character stuff. There was a little spacey-wacy stuff, but mostly this was about character. This was about everybody sort of coming to grips with the stakes of what's on the line here, and everybody had sort of an emotional piece to them, between Saru's story, between what's going on with Tarka and Book, what's going on with Burnham and Rillick. There's a lot of character stuff in this one to sort of set the stakes for, I would imagine, what will be a fairly busy and a little more action-y last few episodes of the season.
Mm-hmm.
Thoughts?
I thought the look between Michael Burnham and the president was pretty interesting. It was like, man, we just talked about this. See, they're like, oh yeah, we got plenty of time. We just sit here, eat some sandwiches, binge all that Netflix we missed over the past, 1,000-some years, and just wait it out. And they're, they're kind of stuck. And like, well, we just talked about the fact that, we probably should tell them that, like, there is, like, if you have to take sacrifices to get to the goal, you need to take them. There is no taking it safe kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like they do end up resolving it at the end, right? When they have the president and Michael have another conversation about, why are you doing this? We need to be together on this. And they have the announcement to the whole crew. But it probably would have been useful then too. It would have probably felt less weird in the moment.
Tim?
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting episode. The sort of the bit between Saru and Trina, just sort of as filler, I guess. Kind of moving the story along, but a little disjointed from where the episode is. Some of the stuff was written on the wall in terms of where it was going to go. Like, the Vulcan representative is late arriving. I don't know. Maybe you saw that Trina was going to end up being the stand-in for that, because clearly her assistant was kind of saying, listen, we got to go, kind of, in the first time they meet together. It also was an opportunity for Tarka's story to be told. Like, we have to have a backstory for him, right? And find out why he's such a jerk, right? Although I think he just was made to be a jerk, and just like what the justification for his behavior is, right?
I'm not sure that we needed it, though. Well. Yeah, I'm not sure we needed it. No, I know.
So I'm saying, like, it was kind of like that's what I'm saying. These two story points were kind of odd in terms of, like, they didn't really Like, we could have gone without them. So here's my beef with what I just watched on TV here on cable television is I did happen to notice there were a lot of commercials in the breaks, right? Like, there was probably like, I think Rogers must have stacked like 8 to 12 commercials on each break. Mm-hmm. Zapped through them. Mm-hmm. And then, I don't know what the actual time of the episode was because I was watching it on PVR. And yeah, I mean, clearly I missed a good 5 minutes of episode, because normally when I get to the top of the hour, right, the show's finished, and then there's 5 minutes of commercials, and then like a little minute of maybe some title screens. And last week I got a little bit of a teaser, right? But this week it just kind of got to the point where Stamets and Blue Del Barro are standing in engineering, and then the show just ended, right?
Yeah.
And the puddle jumping was kind of interesting, but I don't know. It's.
Well, we talked about stakes the last few weeks, right?
Yeah.
There was no moment there where you're like, boy, they're gonna bite it in the middle of the barrier.
Yeah, the shields are down to 10%. I'm like, yeah, give it 5 minutes. They'll be fine in a minute, Yeah. And then every time, and then when they made it into a bubble, they kind of like, the first thing I thought was, okay, go fix the shields. And then the next thing Michael Burnham says, okay, go fix the shields, Like, yeah, it was a bit odd. Do they get actually through? Does the puddle jumping thing work and they get to the other side? Or?
It does, yep.
Okay, and so did they get to see the disembodied neoclassic sculptures, or?
No, all that really happens when they get to the other side is that there are far less stars. Space is much darker.
Okay, all right, yeah. Well, it's the end of the galaxy. It's like, clearly they've fallen off the edge, right?
Yes. God isn't there waiting for them.
Do we know, is there any sort of explanation as to why there is even a barrier? Like what is the point of the barrier?
I don't know if I don't know if they ever really truly address it.
Yeah, because it did kind of look like a little bit of the Nexus ribbon a bit, when they got to it, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I thought it was kind of interesting. I thought, when they started doing we have 4 hours to get to the DMA, and then they get there, and then they're like, oh no, it's another 9 hours or whatever. Like, I thought, that was kind of like a. How time stretches when you get close to a black hole kind of thing, or time speeds up or slows down. We don't know what really happens because nobody's ever really been in one, but, it's such a big gravity well that time and space and everything gets distorted. I thought that it would be kind of an interesting thing that every time they tried to get a little closer to it, it'd be a little further away kind of thing, right? They could have played with that sort of, physical spatial dimension distortion thing, right? But, they could not, no matter how much they tried. It was like, what is it like? You know what I mean? I mean, like when you have a math thing where you pi, you divide by a certain number, and no matter how, you can never really get down to zero. You know what I mean? There's
there's asymptotic,
like golden ratio kind of things, huh?
I guess I'm unclear because it first sounded like you were talking about like an asymptote where you can keep going increasingly towards a value and never actually reach it,
or like a Mandelbrot where it just keeps getting more, the deeper you get into it, the more detailed it becomes, and it repeats itself over and over and over again. Like, those mathematical constructs that you never really have an end, right?
Yeah, like pi is a good example in that it, as far as I know, it does not have an end.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it just keeps going.
So I have an update thanks to our friends at Memory Alpha. So there are two different space things with very similar names, and that's where I think the confusion that we've had, and I think that a lot of people have come in. So there are two different things that exist in space. One is called the Galactic Barrier. One is called the Great Barrier. So the Galactic Barrier is what we're dealing with here, and this is tied into the same Galactic Barrier that we've seen in the original Star Trek series. So this is I'll read what they've got. It's an energy field that is composed of negative energy surrounding the rim of the Milky Way galaxy. No form of transmission was known to be capable of penetrating the barrier. The Great Barrier is the thing that we saw in Star Trek V. It is an immense energy field of unknown properties surrounding the galactic core of the Milky Way galaxy. One's in the middle, all the way in the middle, one's all the way on the outside.
Right, so the ones where Tatooine is and the other one's not, right?
Yeah, one is Coruscant and one is Tatooine.
Right. Okay. Gotcha. Yeah.
Which may be the nerdiest sentence ever uttered. I feel like I almost went full Dharmakant Jalad at Tanagra there for a second.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's, I guess, where the confusion that we've had is, and I know I've seen other people saying like, what? I guess it's that similarities. We have the galactic barrier, which was, let's see, 1, 2, 3. They mentioned in a few different original series episodes, the galactic barrier. The Great Barrier is only referred to in Star Trek V. So if you're going to blame anyone, blame William Shatner. For the confusion that you're feeling, and that we were feeling it too. So the good news is we don't have to watch Star Trek V again. Thank God. So,
well, the other thing that's confusing me, has always confused me, is the neutral zone. But that's a completely different thing.
Yeah,
right?
well, let's save that for when the Klingons, who are mysteriously absent, show up again.
I just had this really interesting thought. Like, so. And you gotta put it. It's kind of like the Walkman, BlackBerry, iPhone comment I made earlier. Like when Star Trek, the original series, came out in 1966, space travel was just a brand new thing. We didn't have a Hubble telescope. We didn't have all these sort of concepts. Like I don't even know if I think we might have had a Big Bang Theory, but I don't know that really we hadn't had powerful enough telescopes to really see that far back or back in time. Because you're not actually looking at stars that exist today. You're looking at stars that existed, eons ago, right? But so when Star Trek started their little baby 5-year mission, like the 3-hour tour, it was kind of like they put Kirk and Spock and McCoy in this thing and said, just go and find stuff and discover new worlds and new civilizations and boldly go where no man has gone before. And yet, when we get to the next generation, we know a lot more about space. We've spent time in space. We know like what happens to the human body if you're up in space for like a year or whatever at a time, right? Because we did Skylab and all that kind of stuff, right? And we had sent things to Mars and we had sent things to Venus, and like Voyager had left or was leaving what we know of as our solar system, right? And sort of like what I'm getting at is by the time the next generation came along, we knew more about space travel. We knew more about what makes up space, right? And now, Discovery and all that kind of stuff, they have the benefit of all the, like even more so, we all have memory alpha. We can go look stuff up, and we also we can look at the science, and we know more stuff now than because we have things like the internet. And before you had to go find the nerd at high school that had read the book in the library that, explained this stuff to you, right?
Yeah.
Or find a smart professor who could, dumb it down so you could understand it, Yep. But it's kind of like the naivete of the original series was they just got in this spaceship and kind of just went, go in that direction and see what you find, right? And, so I mean, like, you know what I mean? Like it was almost like a 3-hour tour, like in terms of like they just kind of got out there and poked around a bit, right? Whereas now that we're in Discovery and all that kind of stuff, and Lower Decks and everything like that, we know a lot more as humans on this Earth, reading the science fiction or watching these TV shows. We know more about the science behind it, so we can go, what? Programmable antimatter? Are you kidding me? Like back in the 60s, people would have gone, oh, programmable antimatter, wow, you know what I mean? Like, and actually, when you go back and watch the original series, it's very disjointed in terms of like they're not even wearing the same phaser belts, and they constantly changing the uniforms and stuff like that as each season went by, and each creative director came along, and I mean it's kind of like it was like a fun camping trip with phasers and transporters, and now it's like, this major scientific affair, right?
Yeah.
With multi-dimensional universes and, all that kind of stuff, right?
They're trying.
Yeah. So they got to keep up with
yeah, and I guess that's,
Jessica Joneses.
That's the risk, though. I mean, the risk is that they are going to, I mean, we were confused about these two very similar sounding things, but beyond that, science fiction can sometimes falter when science takes over fiction.
Right, yeah.
You do need to have creativity. It is always interesting when they build in, things that have been new discoveries into these pieces of fiction. But if you get lost in the minutiae of science, it starts to bog things down. I don't want them just to have MacGuffins for MacGuffin's sake all the time. But at the same time, if you try and ground it too much in reality, then you're at the risk of alienating your audience by just confusing the crap out of them.
Well, by the same token, like, in Star Wars, we have kyber crystals, things that just don't exist. You know what I mean? Like, and lightsabers, which is another thing that to this day can't possibly exist. We have a concept of warp travel. That we have all the science behind bending space and time and that kind of stuff, but those are just theories at this point, right? And so it's kind of it's interesting that we have these sort of concepts and we can buy into them, but it's not. It's like so far beyond it, and we can grant them the ability to have a transporter that'll disassemble atomic structures and put them back together, and it'll be the self-same person that was transported. And it's not like there's a Kirk that we have to kill because now there's a new Kirk on the planet that we just beamed down. Or we can replicate food, and they're not or they're taking Soylent Green and making it look like a steak, sort of thing. But yeah, it's interesting that we can we have these different things that are beyond actual science, and we as fans of science fiction will accept them as potential realities, right?
Yeah, I would say if you're a fan of science fiction, you are.
As long as we don't talk about midichlorians, I'll be fine.
Yeah, exactly. I think if you're a fan of science fiction, I think you're just open to the possibilities a little more. I think that's what science fiction is and does, right? It attracts people who are open-minded to imagination and science and all those things.
Yeah, I go back to the Pulp Fiction books. I don't know if you guys have ever read Asimov or Heinlein or those guys. They came up with ideas that were just so far out there and just weird and wrong. I mean, but because they wrote about them with such assuredness, you just kind of went, oh, okay, sure, that sounds plausible, right? I was actually thinking today with currently what's going on politically. There's a book by Heinlein called Friday, where the main character Friday is she's actually a sentient being like Data. But she's also actually I can't remember if she's a sentient being, but she's not a real person. She's an artificial life form, but she looks like a woman, right? And she's like kind of like the Johnny Mnemonic. She's a courier who carries around, who does stuff, but she's like a super James Bond kind of thing. But she lives in Winnipeg, right? But I think if I remember correctly, the USSR has kind of taken over most of the Earth. So I was kind of thinking about that, like those kind of like things that they would have written back in the, I think that was written in the 80s, right? But or late 70s anyway. But the whole idea of like how politics kind of like they kind of like, as well as playing around with science, they also played around with Earth and society and all that kind of stuff, and how it all kind of puzzles together, right?
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Yeah, it's fun stuff. But if you go back and read it, it's like one of the concepts that Heinlein had as an example was, rather than having airplanes that you would get in a rocket, and you wouldn't just go from here, you wouldn't get in a plane and just slowly taxi and take off and fly to England. Like, they literally would put you in a rocket and like slingshot you to England. You would be in England in like 20 minutes. You know what I mean? Like, kind of, and I don't know how they managed to land you safely, but they did. But you kind of went, oh, well, that's how you do it. You get in this little rocket thing, and they fling you across the Earth, and you're there, kind of thing, right? Or like, there was another book I read by him called The Number of the Beast, where they get in, they have the family car, and these two couples get into this car, and they just jet off into space, like the Millennium Falcon taken off from Tatooine, like just bang, and they're gone, right? Which, as we, look, based on what we have in physics today, there's nothing that we have that can take off like that, right? Even like rockets are like super heavy right now, right? So, you know what I mean? Like, how the Millennium Falcon just goes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess the closest thing to that would be like a vertical takeoff and landing, like a Harrier jet, something like that, right?
Yeah, well, it's Harrier jet's an example, but even the Harrier jet, if you think about it, takes off slowly and lands slowly.
Yeah, it's true. Right? It's not like it just sort of up and flies away. It has to get up off the ground far enough first. Yeah.
Yeah, but when we read this stuff and we watch this stuff, we accept that is possible, right? Because we just saw it on the screen, right? Sort of thing.
Yep.
Like Superman can fly. He just runs to a window and jumps out, and next thing you know, he's like, he's not really like lying on a table with the wind blowing his cape, you know. As a kid, I was always fascinated by the original Superman with the other Reeve, George Reeve. You know, because he was clearly lying on a table. You know, like his stomach was completely flat, right? Like he was planked, right? Yeah, but, you know, as a kid, you're like, yeah, man, he's flying, you know?
Yeah.
And that's when Christopher Reeve came along and they did the whole motion capture camera stuff. That was like amazing.
Well, and the harnesses and all that. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Cool stuff.
Yep.
Cool beans. All right, let's jump to... We're going to come back to my discussion of science fiction in a minute, but let's jump to the watch list and talk about my maze thing here.
Yeah, so the Star Trek Prodigy characters, at least some of them are getting action figures. Some immediately, more to follow in 2023. Sadly, we don't have info on we don't have images on the hologram Janeway. We do know that this year will be Jankum-Pog, Quinn, Dal, and Zero and Murph with Rock Talk in early 2023. I don't know what that's about. We don't know anything about the Diviner or Dreadnought.
Maybe there's not enough plastic to make her or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. You know what? Now that I think about it, action figures often do like series. So maybe she's like in a series 2 wave or something.
Yeah, they did that not long ago with the Star Wars Black series for the Bad Batch, where they didn't just drop the Bad Batch. They've been sort of eking them out one at a time, which is probably good because those are very expensive figures. Well, relatively expensive. They're $35-$40. But I think it's particularly interesting that they chose to release these ones and not any antagonists. Like there's no Diviner, there's no Dreadnought, there's no. So if you're like a kid and you're like, we're gonna have an adventure, it's like we have no enemies.
Yeah.
I don't know why they would do this in the modern era. I do remember, and I think this is accurate. Granted, I'm going to like 5 to 6 years old now. When they released the Star Trek: The Next Generation action figures, I don't think there was an enemy of any sort. It was just the crew. And the Enterprise
to be fair, that's part of the reason for that is the fact that they had done a pretty poor job of developing any kind of nemesis for them, I guess, beyond Q. But even Q was only in like 2 episodes the first 2 seasons, right? Like they really hadn't developed a nemesis for them until the Borg came along. And then later on, they sort of started adding more to it. Like that's... To be honest, if we're going to get too far into it, but I think that was one of the big failings of the first few seasons of Star Trek is there really isn't an overarching enemy for them to face. It was sort of the alien of the week was kind of what they were doing.
The Next Generation, or are you talking about
Next Generation?
Oh, okay.
The original Star Trek series did it pretty well from the beginning. They didn't have one person, but there was always, the Klingons, the Romulans. There was always a conflict in TNG when they came around the first couple seasons. It was just sort of, one of the episodes, the bad guy was a big pile of black goo. I mean, like they didn't do a great job of, put that in a package and sell it to kids, Yeah,
pour them out on your desk and play with them.
Reenact the scene where Tasha Yar gets inexplicably killed in episode 9.
I'm surprised they didn't do even the laziest thing of like, okay, we need an antagonist. Yeah, they don't have anything good for us to use. Well, you know what? We've got this Alligator Man character from a similar sized series. There you go. Repaint him. He's a Gorn now.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
But wasn't the Next Generation all in Picard's head anyway? Wasn't that just Q just messing with his head?
You never know. It has the the Newhart ending where it was like all a dream from the original show.
Yeah. It was all told from the point of view of an old man with Alzheimer's, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That would explain a lot of the episodes, I think. Head over to Jonathan's pick.
Yeah, mine's one we've talked about before, but we finally got a little confirmation. We were talking about when we were going to be able to watch Spider-Man No Way Home. We've been talking about waiting for them to actually announce when this is finally coming. It is finally coming. So if you want, you can start watching Spider-Man No Way Home in the comfort of your home starting on March the 22nd. That's if you choose to get it on the digital.
So like home release or whatever they're calling it?
No, this is just for digital release. You'll be able to buy it on the iTunes store. You'll be able to buy it for any number of platforms. I'm sure Google Play and all those other things.
Oh, heavy spoiler on the image. Hello.
Yeah. Yeah. Good luck avoiding this one, Jaime. Sorry, dude.
Yeah, don't look at the image.
No, in terms of being spoilerific, this part has been spoiled hypothetically for years now. So
true.
This part was impossible to avoid, but like,
but the how and the why and how it plays out, I think, is really the part.
Yeah, I'm still safe from that at the very least. So clock's ticking. Would you say March 22nd?
March 22nd, you can buy the digital copy on a number of different platforms. If you want to wait to own a physical copy, that is to say Ultra HD or Blu-ray, you can get it on April the 12th. You have to wait a few more weeks. But you will actually be able to play it in your home sooner than later, which is nice.
All right, cool. Well, mine's not really, mine's pick more than, actually both of these are sort of picks. Better Call Saul, I just saw, one of the 57 commercials I zapped through on watching tonight was a commercial for Better Call Saul, which is going to start up on April 18th. So this is the final season of Better Call Saul. And so I started watching Severance. I was kind of avoiding Severance because it sort of had that Office Space kind of feel and look to it. And I'm working in corporate world as I do, and Jonathan, you work in a corporate world, and I think Jaime has at some point in the past.
Mm-hmm.
It just didn't seem like something I would want to watch. But I watched the first two episodes that just came out on... I'm not sure if both episodes dropped on Apple TV, but they're out now. And I almost forget the name of Adam Cook, is that his name? Or
Adam Scott.
Adam Scott, yeah. He's from Parks and Recreation, I think, right?
Yeah, he's been on a lot of different great shows, but it's one he's well known for.
Yeah, he plays a really sort of disheveled kind of character in this story. The idea is, the concept is, and it's in the trailer, so it's no big secret, but the idea is that these people work in a company where they're given a choice to have their personal life and their work life severed, right? And so they stick a chip in the back of their head, and when they go to work, they
they get disconnected from their memories, right?
Yeah, they kind of get in this elevator thing, and the camera angle changes a bit, and you sort of get the impression that they're now inside this thing, and they know nothing about outside. So they have all their friends at work. They have there's four of them in this work group, and they all know each other and know each other's habits, and there's sort of one of the new people comes into the group, and she has a sort of orientation, and she's all disoriented and not sure what's going on. That's kind of the first episode. But what's interesting about it is, and then when they at the end of the day at 5:00 they go home. So the next day comes along and she sort of says, "So this is it? Like I just went home and now I'm back here again?" And they're like, "Yeah, that's kind of sort of what it is, right?" It's really interesting how it's filmed. They must have gone and got like a big giant warehouse, and all of these, standardized, I don't know if you in our building downtown, there's these walls that they kind of put up. And they can depending on how they break up a floor, they can build different sort of office units in it, and they have like glass doors and all that kind of stuff. And some of them is a hallway with just a door that you open and you go into your office, or you have a badge and you badge through. So there's scenes where they're walking down these big long hallways with the fluorescent lights and the plain walls, and they walk and they turn left and then they turn right, and they walk like football field lengths as the camera man walks along with them, which is kind of weird, twisty stuff, right? But when one of the episodes, the very first episode, the main character ends up going to a dinner with his sister at her house, and there's a bunch of people sitting around there, and they're all having a sort of a bunch of friends over kind of dinner party, as it were, and they're talking about one of them says, "Oh, you're a sever. You've been severed," and they start talking to him about what it's like, and it gets really sort of science fiction-y. Like I love this kind of writing where it's not your typical popcorn movie kind of stuff. It's really ethereal, and you get this sort of sense in this dinner party that there's a real divide between the rest of society who sees these people as being severed. They know they made the choice to be severed, but the question is, why did that person go through to be severed? Like in this particular case, Adam Scott's character has lost a loved one, and he would rather, and sort of like he people at the dinner party are criticizing him for spending 8 hours a day without the memory of having lost this person. Which to him, you can emphasize that maybe that's a relief for him, that he gets to step away from that, right? And it's sort of like the sort of socio-political angle of this choice that this person has made, like Jaime and I both know that there are companies you can work for where you cannot talk about what you do at work, right? And in this case here, it's not that he can't, he's not allowed to talk about what he does, but he also can't talk about what he does because he doesn't know. So it's really an interesting sort of commentary on this kind of like science fiction-y kind of thought concept, right? Or thought exercise, if you will. So I'm really enjoying it. It's like, 2 episodes in and it's kind of like, okay, I'm ready for some more. I mean, it might even be something you could binge once they're all out. But yeah, I highly recommend this show. It's really, really entertaining from that point of view. Like it's not your typical kind of TV show kind of writing. It's very, very sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? It's plays with your brain space, if you will.
Mm-hmm. The thinker.
Yeah. Intellectual, that's the word I'm looking for. It's very intellectual. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. And so you pasted something here, Jonathan, for me?
I did. I pasted in a gift for you because I know that this is your favorite thing in the world.
It is. Ozark Season 4, Part 2 is coming out soon. April. Speaking of Part 2, I watched the first episode just before this afternoon. I watched the first episode of Part 2 of the finale of The Walking Dead. And oh my God, what a piece of trash. Right. I watched the first part of the series and, I'm catching up on the characters and, like Negan's now one of the gang, Mm-hmm. He's now dating Rachel. It's all cool, naked guys across the hallway. And it's ridiculous. But, and Carol and Norm and all that kind of, or what's his name? Is it Norm?
No, Norm's his real name. Norman Reedus. This is Daryl.
Yeah. Daryl and Carol and Molly and Maggie's come back, mm-hmm. and the kids are growing up, and there's still zombies in every episode, and there's a gratuitous killing of these mindless zombies constantly, right? So anyway, so the first part of the finale was okay, kind of moved along. There's a new group of people that are just a piece of work and
victims to
they have to. Victims, and then they're, and they dispatch the evildoer at the end of part one of 3, right? Finales. Mm. And then they go to this next episode, and it kind of picks up right in it ended sort of at a big kerfuffle battle kind of thing. And so it picks up right in the middle of that battle, like with no recap, no what last time on The Walking Dead, none of that nonsense, right? And then, so there's the struggle in the main Alexandria area, which is where the bulk of our people live, and then there's this new place that they went to on a mission to get food from this other people, and it's more about the people killing each other as opposed to the zombies being the threat. The zombies are like mosquitoes in this show, right? Like you just oh, here's another zombie, let's go whack that one with the fly swatter, right, kind of thing, and. The problem was with this episode I saw today was it was very disjointed. Like, you'd see a situation where somebody's in peril and they would jump to another story and they would come back and the first story had moved, like they had skipped like a big chunk of plot. It's like really, really bad editing, It's like, yeah, this guy was in trouble over here now. He's climbing out the window over there. And it's like, what is going, like, it's just like, yeah, that's what I said. Like, just from an editing point of view, what a piece of crap, like, I like after watching this episode, I'm like, I'm really quite like, I decided I was going to watch the last season just because it's the last season. But, and as I was a big fan from the very beginning. I just stopped watching about 3 years ago. But yeah, I just like this episode was, to me, was like, I don't know if I would either. I've got it set in the PVR. I might give it one more show, but one more viewing. But I may end up not wasting my time.
Well, it's
sad.
Yeah, I mean, I think
it's gone from The Walking Dead, which is TWD, to WTF, right?
Yeah, it's definitely one of those ones that's. I mean, it was just getting way too murder porny for me. I couldn't justify tuning in every week because I was just feeling more not unsettled in a good way. Good fiction can unsettle you. It was more that was gratuitous or that was unnecessary, and they were just spending so much time. They would basically introduce new characters, build new characters up, kill old characters as their contracts ran out, and they just kept like turning it over, and it was becoming tedious. Maybe when it's all said and done, I will one day go back and watch the parts that I hadn't seen, but I really did just lose my appetite for it. And it's funny because, again, I will toot my own horn one more time, but I was in on Walking Dead, the comic book, very, very, very early. Yeah. Was writing about it for the papers and stuff and the web. And, I never really got tired of that. It was always consistently entertaining in its own way, but again, it's such a different medium. The violence was certainly spectacular at times, and but it just never felt quite as gratuitous.
Yeah, and it starts off from a really honest place. I mean, like the whole concept of like what's the name of the main character? The cop.
Oh man, it's been so long.
Yeah. Anyway,
Andrew Lincoln's character. Yeah.
Andrew Lincoln. Yeah. He wakes up in a hospital and the whole world's gone to hell, right? Kind of thing, right?
Is it Rick Grimes?
And that's very similar to.
That's right. You get the
Yeah, Rick. Yeah, but it's very very close to 28 Days.
Yeah, 28 Days Later. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know which came first, the chicken or the egg there, but those both have a really interesting beginning, because it's not like, like we've all just gone through a pandemic, which is a real parallel to this kind of thing, and it's not like it kind of crept up on us slowly over time. It's kind of like, imagine you were in a coma and you woke up in the middle of like May last year or 2020, and all of a sudden everybody's walking around with masks on, and people are dropping like flies, kind of thing. Like that's kind of how 28 Days and The Walking Dead started, right? And then he meets Glenn early on, and Glenn's like used to be a pizza delivery guy. Now he's just he's wily, and he's got his ways to get in and out of the city to grab food, and and that whole thing starts up, right? And then so from a storyline point of view, it was interesting, and like you said, like the first bunch of episodes, there were zombies in it, but they weren't like constant zombies, right? Like you need zombie repellent now. Like I was sitting there watching this thing today, and it's like, two of them are sitting at a fireplace around a campfire having a conversation, and a zombie shows up. One of them gets up and goes, just deals with the zombie, while they're just having their conversation, drinking their beers, sort of thing. But it's just silly.
To put that into context, again, I think it's true to a certain extent. You would start to get desensitized after a while because you'd be able to assess risk so quickly after being in risk and jeopardy constantly. When the pandemic or whatever it is that starts this thing first goes off, you'd be like, oh my God, the dead are walking. After like 10 years, you'd be like, I'll go kill this one.
Yeah. You want to take care of that one? Okay.
And unless you saw at one point they have the concept of the herd, right? Where they're walking en masse, then maybe you've got a problem. But, a few of them, you're like, whatever.
Well, and they had the one interesting sort of plot point they had last year, or sort of part one of final season, whatever. I'm rolling my eyes because I can't even figure out how to call this, but Maggie and Negan, right? So, Maggie hates Negan's guts because he killed Glenn in front of her, and has been and she left she left because she went to go do another TV show and come back. But now she's back, and she's the de facto leader of the people in Alexandria, right? Because she's Maggie, right? And so the whole of the first part of this first part of season final, whatever, 13, whatever it is, they're like looking at each other, circling each other constantly. Like they're both on the same side, fighting for the same cause, but all along Maggie's like, I'm going to kill you, and he's like, I know you're going to kill me, so I'm going to kill you. Kind of like that whole, like the complete opposite of Saru and Taval, right? Although not quite the complete opposite, if you know what I'm saying. But And it kind of resolves itself in the beginning of this episode because Negan has now left and gone off to do something else. But they got through the struggle that first part of the season ended with. But yeah, but like the whole the bouncing around of the struggle in the first part of the episode was just like the bad editing was just too much, And it's not like they had bad commercial breaks, or like it's AMC, so it's not like the network put the commercials in the wrong places, kind of thing, right? So yeah, just bad. And then the worst part about it is like I used to watch The Talking Dead because I used to find that a really interesting show. I like the host and all that kind of stuff, but yeah, they literally just like do a zombie count, how many people got killed this week, and they show all the different ways and amazing ways that they got killed, right? Yeah. I mean, from a makeup point of view, it's kind of interesting how they've extended the sort of concept of the zombies and that kind of stuff over time. But there's one part where like I've had this argument with Tammy all the time. Was one part where there's a flooded basement, right? This basement's flooding because it's raining outside. But of course, I don't know why all this water is coming into this one particular basement. But then of course the zombies come down, and the question is, do zombies float or not?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the issue that I always had with the concept of The Walking Dead is that the way they introduced it in the comics is different from the show. In the comics, it's a virus that is transmitted through being bit or scratched or whatever. Yeah, on the show, the concept is that everybody now has this.
Everybody's infected.
So if you die, you become The Walking Dead, and you have to be put down.
I thought The Walking Dead were the people.
Well, fair.
Like, they're not killed people.
Yeah. So the idea is, okay, fine. So if you're the walking, if you're a zombie, then you have to have your head cut off. But how do you reconcile that with, the fact that bodies deteriorate? Like, initially, if there's this, everybody gets sick, a lot of people die, they become zombies, they in turn attack and kill other people, they in turn become zombies. After a fairly short amount of time, the bodies would start to decompose to a point where
the muscles would start to atrophy, to stop working. How do these zombies fuel themselves?
Yeah. So, I mean, the premise is just so deeply flawed when you break it down that again, it's just like anything else in horror, sci-fi, or anything else. You have to suspend disbelief. But, that's the part where I sort of get stuck sometimes, where I'm like, there would, of course, continue to be zombies because continually people would die. And since they are all infected, they would continue to die and turn into zombies. But the numbers would dwindle so vastly because of the atrophy of time that 10 years later, you're right, a mosquito isn't even a fair analogy. It would be like spotting a wolf in the woods. There'd be like, oh, there's a zombie. Wow, I haven't seen one of those in a while.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, I guess that's it for another week. So if people can get in touch with you, Jonathan, where would they find you?
Always on Instagram and Twitter as @JPK News.
Right. And how many people want to get in touch with you? Where would they find you?
I'm on Twitter as @DevWithTheHair.
Alrighty. And once again, my name is Timitra, Timmitra. It's how it's spelt on the Twitter machine. Until next time, we'll see you in the future. Bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to the Spotcast podcast. If you want to find out more about the podcast or see the episode show notes, visit the Spotcast website at spotcast.com. You can get in touch with us on the website or follow us on Twitter at Spotcast. If you have feedback or questions, send us a tweet with the hashtag AskSpotcast. If you like the show, please consider recommending us to a friend, writing a review on iTunes, or pledging any amount at patreon.com/Spotcast. You can find details on how to help us on our website, spotcast.com/sponsor us. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the future.
So Jaime, you have a Comixology account, do you not?
I do, and I think I could have sworn I had linked it with an Amazon account when they, like a month or two ago, said do it, and then last week or two, they're like, oh, by the way, you should do this. I'm like, do I need to do anything again? And I logged back in.
Yeah, so they revamped their app this week. And so if you log into your Comixology app and you log in through that to your Amazon, it links everything you've ever purchased or gotten for free from your Comixology all into this new app. Plus, they've now added the buying feature right into the app. So before, you used to have to go onto Amazon to buy stuff, and then it would show up in your app. But it seemed like it was very disorganized. It wasn't like I didn't always find everything that I was looking for in the same place. There's been a lot of blowback online. Some people hate this new part of the app. They have said this week that they're going to go back and actually tweak it and add, take away some features, add some features, and improve the experience. But I will say this is the first time in a long time that I felt like my entire digital comic book library is all in one place, where I can actually see everything that I own in one spot. And so, yeah, I would say if you guys both have them, take the time to update your app and log in this week. You might be surprised to see it all sort of sort itself out in a more coherent way.
So we log in with Amazon, not with Comixology account, right?
But when you launch the brand new app, it asks for your Amazon login. And so you log in that way, and then it'll upload and basically add all your
I'm going into the site because I did look because I remember getting a Spider-Man when the iPad first came out, like 2010 or whatever, right? And then I think one of the episodes you said to us, there's a whole bunch of Black Panther for free, right? I went and got all that stuff.
Yep.
And now I'm just logged in on the web to my account, but it says Amazon in the corner. And I've just logged in. So am I logged in with, what am I logged in? It looks like I'm logged in with my Amazon account, but I'm just trying to see if I can find those. Like, where do you look and see to find your titles that you own? Because it wants to sell me more titles, right?
Are you logging on a computer or on your phone?
I'm on my computer.
Yeah, so try logging into the app on.
I found all my Black Panthers on the app, on the Comixology app.
There you go.
But I can't find that Spider-Man title that I have.
Yeah, so again, maybe it's not connecting it. I was surprised when I did the refresh and I uploaded it. It not only did it pull in like all that kind of stuff, but and I had bought stuff over the years when it was on sale. Sometimes they'll do really good sales on the app, or well, at that point it was through Amazon. But there was stuff on here where I was like, I completely forgot that I had got something for free or that I had bought something. So I was like, oh my God, I have so many digital comics I did not remember ever getting. I was like, oh, I had that. Oh, I didn't know I had that. Oh, that's a so. Well,
actually, the one I had wasn't it wasn't a Spider-Man specifically. It was I'm just going to see if I can have this original. Yeah, I have the iPod 1 that came back to me. I restored my account on it, but that's where I saw that I had the Spider-Man, but it wasn't Spider-Man. It was like a sort of a compilation of different comics. Because when the app first came out, it was like they were showing how they were going to, because I think the big debate when the iPad first came out was what's a comic book going to look like on it, right? And as you read it, it kind of zooms in on each panel. Yep. I don't know if they do that still.
Yeah, so in the early 2000s, maybe like 2000, 2001, Marvel.com actually had an excellent reader. This is, of course, pre-smartphone, pre-iPad. So on their website, there was actually a great function on there where they did that sort of dynamic presentation stuff. That's the first place I read all those Ultimate Comic Universe things, Ultimate Spider-Man, Ultimate X-Men. I read those all for free on Marvel.com at the time and was really impressed by that. And then they went to sort of the app view a few years later, and I was really excited about the iPad when the iPad came out, thinking like, "Oh, this could be a really cool way to enjoy comics." And the experience wasn't as good as that. It's gotten better now, but it took a while to get there. I'm just going to point this out because I just discovered this and it made me laugh. If you have the Comixology app here in Canada and you click through to the Discover section, which is supposed to take you to the inventory of books that you can purchase, it's a sign that comes up with a big X for Comixology, and it says, "We are sorry, but this app does not support the Amazon.ca store."
Oh God, I love it.
It says books purchased from Amazon.ca are available to read in this app. So basically, if you're logged into your Amazon account and you buy a digital comic or a Kindle comic, you can view it using this app because you're logged into this app, but you can't purchase anything through the app, even though that was one of the big touts of this app is you could do that, but apparently not in Canada. So once again, oh my God.
It's all right, Jonathan. Something good will happen to counterbalance this.
Yeah, the universe giveth and taketh away, Jaime.
I'm going to find a $20 bill in the couch cushions or something.
Oh, God, that's funny. All right. Well, once more, Canada. Yeah. Here we are, a third world country. Can't even get our comic apps figured out. But yeah, it's funny because some of this stuff, again, I was doing that. I belong to a lot of comic communities online, social media and different platforms and stuff like that. And, Reddit and places like that. And a lot of places are really good if something comes up as a sale or if something comes up as a freebie, like what I shared with you guys about the Black Panther comics. That stuff comes up, people share it. And so it's like, cool, I'm just going to add that. I'm just going to add that. I'm just going to add that. And yeah, I've been doing that, I guess, for, a decade or so. And it's, now when you put in your library, you're like, oh, I actually own a lot of digital comics, which it never really occurred to me that I did. You get, if you buy a Marvel comic for, again, almost 10 years or so, when you buy a printed Marvel comic, it actually comes with a digital code inside the comic book that you can redeem for a digital copy of the book you just bought. However, in order to do that, it's like a little scratch off space inside the comic book, which no self-respecting comic fan would want to do because it damages the integrity of the comic book and therefore inherently the value. So you can buy a comic book and you can do the little scratch off thing, but then you've basically immediately devalued the comic book. So therefore you have to decide what's more important to you, a digital comic or the integrity of your printed comic.
Yeah, that's a rough one.
They resolved that a little bit. They were doing digital codes in some of the collected edition books, but only the ones that were coming shrink wrap sealed. So if a book came wrapped in shrink wrap, there would be a code on the inside that you just entered a digital number or scanned it or whatever it was, and that way you got it. That made a lot of sense. But regular printed comic books, they don't just seal them. So if you were in a comic store, theoretically, you could just like walk over with your iPhone camera and just be like, click, 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 click on all the new releases that week. Exactly, and get yourself like the massive digital comic collection. So they actually put in a safeguard to that. But what that means is if you decide to redeem that, you are inalterably changing the comic book. Yeah. And this is something that happened back in the day, so there used to be these things called Marvel value stamps back in the old comics where if you clipped it out and you mailed them into Marvel, they would send you stuff, or you belonged to a club or all these different things. But now, of course, there are some milestone historic books where people will be like, I have the book. Of course, somebody took a pair of scissors to it in the 1970s. So, yeah, it's funny how those things work off over time, right? I wonder if they get this sorted out, if there'll be an improvement. I'm curious. Jaime, maybe you could be our canary in the coal mine, since you are in the illustrious and populous United States where apparently this functionality works. But I'd be curious to see if that makes the whole enjoying of digital comics easier for people, if there'll be more adoption of that with an easier to use experience. Because I always found the whole shifting between one app to purchase and one app to view as one of the huge stumbling blocks of this thing.
Maybe I should have chosen that and go something else. I don't see a way to purchase.
Yeah, and there's one section that's sort of the library, and there's one that says Discover, and Discover, I think, is where you go to find new stuff and purchase.
That's what I'm looking at, and I see download the sample, reviews. I don't see a big purchases button.
Weird.
Is there a way to see if I have things connected correctly? Let's see, library. Where's my user stuff? My account. Oh, maybe I didn't claim. Apparently I signed in, but have not claimed my Comixology account.
Oh,
the account you submit has already been merged. So what's up? Hit this.
That's on the app you're talking about?
Yeah, let me hit this sync button. Let's see if it does anything. Shut up and take my money. Is the okay. All right, start. Oh, that's my library. Discover Sandman Volume 1.
Oh, here's the thing.
I don't see a way to
claim your
buy. Weird. Or I don't know how to enter it because I see reviews. I see download a sample. I can favorite it. I can't. Oh, it's part of Comixology Unlimited. Let me see. Night Ghoul. Read for free. That's not helpful. Saga number 56.
So what happened? They bought
yeah,
Comixology?
a number of years back they bought Comixology.
Yeah.
So for a while it seemed they not only did they leave it alone, but they kind of neglected it. It felt like, the comics ghetto for a while there, where it was like a pretty unfriendly app experience. And then they, with great fanfare, announced that this past week that they were going to have this new app. And then it's been a little scorched earth this week. People are so Gizmodo has an article they put up this morning that says Comixology promises fixes and updates after disastrous Amazon integration. Disastrous is not a word you want to hear in app integration.
I feel like that's happened to me because, I just do not know how to internet, apparently, because I can definitely download samples of, Star Wars, The High Republic, The Edge of Balance, Volume 2. I can see the series. It says price set by seller. I cannot seem to find a buy button, and I don't see any options anywhere.
In a lengthy Twitter thread today, the first time since Comixology tweeted a similarly large thread about the initial launch, the publisher acknowledged the strong blowback from users and comic creatives about the many changes made to the integration of the app, and promised that they will address the transition. And we have heard your feedback. We know that it was, quote, far from seamless. Well, yes, I guess so.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So stay tuned. Maybe there's more to come.
Yeah, it's funny. What did they think would happen, really?
Mm-hmm.
Somebody shipped this without the buy button, apparently, because I just cannot find a way to buy anything.
Yeah, well, I think you've sunk into the quagmire that they're talking about there.
I mean, I see all my library stuff,
that Jonathan was talking about.
Which is great, but no buy button.
I found the big X that Jonathan was talking about.
Yeah. Are you Canadian space?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Canadian.
Well, same thing happened with when Amazon, sort of Audible, right? Because Audible is also owned by them, and because I was given, when I was doing podcasting, we interviewed some authors, and they gave me codes for their books, which I couldn't download with my Canadian Amazon account or Audible account. I still had an American account, so I would log into the American one and listen to the episodes, right? But yeah, it's really annoying. I've been given lots of books by people over the years, because of my association with the podcast and stuff, but you can't run them in Canada. Ridiculous. Information and reading. Maybe it's under this category here. Clubhouse. Go away, Clubhouse. How does this app library thing work? I mean, you have to click on the multiple one. I'm trying to find this comic book app that I had. Oh, Comixology. I guess that's what it is. Yeah, I guess my Spider-Man's gone. Or not Spider-Man, but my what do you call it when you get a taster, a sample pack or whatever?
Yeah, it's like a teaser, yeah.
It was like an episode of Spider-Man and an episode of something else.
Oh yeah, like the variety pack, the old boxes of mini cereals.
Yeah. It was the very first comic book that because I remember back in the day getting it because we were talking about it at the time, how comic books are going to work on iPad, right?
Yeah.
In the early, because I was looking at a lot of different books like that kind of stuff. Like reading book, like iBooks has come a long way in the 10 years or whatever we've had iPad, right? But I saw it we talked about this on the show a couple of months ago, right? And I remember I went and looked, and I found the Spider-Man, the book I'm talking about, but then I must have gone and married my Comixology account with my Amazon because now I'm not seeing that, right?
Yeah.
I'm looking on my iPad for a reading group or whatever. No, where's my iBooks account? Trying to find stuff on the iPad is so hard these days. If you don't use the app library, right?
I mean, you probably should use the app library and just.
Well, see, if I type books in, for example, right? Like if I do a search, I could find the iBooks app, right? But it doesn't tell me where on the iPad it is. I can just click on the icon and open it, which is not what I want. I want to know where on the computer, where on the device it is, right?
Yeah, I like a long press and then an option to like highlight on home screen or something.
You can do that on the Mac. You can get info on it. It'll tell you where it's actually on the physical device, right?
Yeah, or like reveal in Finder and just have it open a new window and show you, here it is. This is what this file is.
So here's an interesting question. I have 2 copies of Rob Whittaker's Developing Inclusive Mobile Apps on my iBooks account. The same book. Like, is it like different issues or?
Do you remember me mentioning to you both that Miracle Man series, the omnibus that was coming out? It's now dropped onto Amazon. It's not coming out till September, but they finally got the pre-orders up, and yeah, list price is 125 Canadian dollars, but they just put it up for $89.30. So,
wow,
it's a bargain.
A bargain at that price. Yeah. Well, look, I have the Objective-C programming language by Apple on my iPad. I mean,
that's definitely one I put on there pretty early on too. Like probably a blast from the past now.
Yeah. Well, we were joking on the show that after the changes they're making at Swift.org, it's Objective-C is going to make a comeback.
Talk about a crossover sort of thing with the toxic fan base scared away the creator of Swift, and now who knows?
Or I found another one here called iOS Application Programming Guide. When did I put this on my computer? This is like an early piece. How do I wonder if they have like a, what do you call it, masthead? What do you call that thing on the first page of a book? No, title page.
Yeah.
Is that it? No. 2010. All rights reserved. How to make an app. Where was this book in 2010?
Yep, it would be a 6th grader in elementary school if it was a child.
This?
Which is pretty weird to think about. It's like, oh man, has it really been that long since this stuff came out? Yep, sure has.
Mm-hmm. Well, Objective-C is older than that too, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have the Thai Slow Book Cookbook. Yeah, I was talking to somebody at Apple, and he was telling me, we were talking about that. They remember that book publisher app that they had for a while? That's gone, according to the guy from Apple. They had like an authoring app you could get, and you could write your own books with.
Ooh, I do remember that. Yeah.
Oh, books. Here it is.
Yeah.
Kindle. I have Kindle. I wonder if I put it in a Kindle. I have a Kindle app too, right?
Yeah, it does say that it works, that if you have the same thing with the Comixology, because obviously Amazon owns Kindle as well.
Look at that. I have Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. I didn't know I had that. This was one. I got to read Math Overboard. It's a book I got from a friend of mine recommended on trying to relearn math. So wait, do I own these books? Yeah, from my library. Effective Darth Maul. Son of Darthamir.
Oh, Son of Dathomir.
Right.
That's a good story, actually.
Yeah, it's not free.
No, it's not, but it's a good story.
Alrighty. Anyway, gotta go.
Talk to you next week, guys.
Bye.
Talk to you later.
Yep.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.